How's it going, everyone? It's Sam. Today we have an awesome video. We're going to be talking about the Bitcoin levels of wealth. What does it mean to have zero point zero 0.01 Bitcoin? Well, today it means you have about $400 worth of an asset that half the people on Earth have no idea what it is. About a tenth of the people are super bullish on it, and then the rest of the people are pretty bearish on it. So right now, it's a nice little investment for you going into the next bull run. But 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 30, 40, what will that mean? What will people think of you when they know that you have zero point 0.1 Bitcoin? What about if you had a whole coin? Will you live on a castle? Will you live however you want for the rest of eternity? We're going to talk about that. Talk about what it means depending on where you're at in your Bitcoin journey, what this means for you, assuming we really are right and this Bitcoin asset is going to continue to grow and swallow up other asset classes. We're going to look at how hard it is to get your hands on Bitcoin, how hard it will be years from now to get your hands on Bitcoin. Even if you spend millions and millions of dollars, it will be nearly impossible for a lot of people to hit the levels that they want to have in terms of Bitcoin wealth. So we're going to talk about all that. Now, this video is inspired a little bit by this meme. I've seen this before. 2010, I'm a millionaire. I'm a Bitcoiner. They have nothing behind him. 2020, I'm a millionaire. I'm a Bitcoiner. A little bit more modest house. 2030, I'm a millionaire. Doesn't mean much by 2030, or means a lot less because of the value of the US dollar going down. I'm a Bitcoiner with their Lamborghini and their really nice house. 2040, he's a Bitcoiner. They say he has a whole coin. Whoa. Living in a castle. So it's a little bit inspired by that. It's also inspired by a video that I made probably 6 months ago that a lot of people liked. A lot of people loved that video, and I want to revamp it. I do want to play a clip from it, though. Something that had recently been on Altcoin Daily, where Michael Saylor talks about whether 0.01 Bitcoin is enough. Is that enough? Right? We're bullish on Bitcoin. Can you get by with that amount, or do you need more? So I'm going to play that towards the end of the video. But first, if you don't mind, hit subscribe, turn on the bell notification so I know that you like these videos and you want to see more of them. You'll get notified right away when you turn on that bell notification. Also, there's a link down there to Margex where you can trade cryptocurrency. So in case you want to long or short, or in case you want to try to amplify your returns, you can check out the link to Margex. There's no KYC, there's no VPN that you need to sign up, which means they don't ask for a lot of your personal information. It's quick to set up, and there's a deposit bonus. Now, Bitcoin's price right now is around $43,000. Last time I did this, Bitcoin was right around $30,000. It can move quickly, right? This is one of those videos where I'm not giving you a bunch of news, what's happening in the market today. We're just looking big picture. Like, what does it mean to own Bitcoin? From just a fun perspective, to go through the motions of thinking like, okay, if you have a certain amount of Bitcoin, and we are right about this, you are going to be extremely wealthy. Now, like I said, this is more of a fun video to think about the possibilities, kind of like the retire on Bitcoin. Like, we go through different scenarios. If I think Bitcoin is going to $1 million, you could be more bearish or you could be more bullish. So take that into account. But let's go through it. So right now, there are about 21 million Bitcoin. Well, there is exactly 21 million Bitcoin that will ever be in circulation, and there are about 8 billion people on Earth. So that means if there is no Bitcoin lost, and if there weren't any entities holding a bunch of Bitcoin, everyone was willing to sell and have the average amount per human on Earth would be about 0.0026 Bitcoin. But that number is getting smaller all the time because we have more and more people being born. We also have a lot of Bitcoin lost. Now, there are also a lot of millionaires on Earth, a lot of millionaires that are probably a little bit more, I'd say, financially savvy than just the average person on Earth because they have money. They're looking at how to gain returns. Right now, it's around 60 million adults. Keep in mind, that's probably gone up a lot. This is 2022 numbers, and we had a massive rally in the market last year, or this year in 2023. So this is probably much higher now, probably closer to 70 million, if not more. There are more people that are millionaires every single day. So how many Bitcoin can a millionaire get? Is it like 5, 10? No, it's nowhere close to there. If we have 70 million millionaires in the world, and there's 17 million Bitcoin left, take into account about 4 million lost Keep in mind too that there's about 1.5 million yet to be mined. So let's just say there's 17 million left. Each millionaire can have less than a quarter of a Bitcoin. But also keep in mind, a lot of it is already taken off of exchanges. A lot of people hold, like a lot of big whales hold a lot of Bitcoin. So there's actually only about 2 million Bitcoin left on exchanges. So take that same number, that 2 million Bitcoin, divide by 70 million millionaires, there's just about 0.0285 Bitcoin per millionaire. I realize lots of numbers. I'm just trying to set the scene that it is hard for people to accumulate a lot of Bitcoin if a lot of people come into the market. And there are a lot of ETF applications right now for Bitcoin. So there is a very good chance that people will start buying up Bitcoin. The supply will continue to go down. Keep in mind that some entities that don't have $1 million, or some people that have under $1 million will still try to buy Bitcoin. So let's say we earmark 500,000 Bitcoin for those entities. Or, I mean, you can even look at the larger entities like Michael Saylor that continue to buy Bitcoin. So take that into account. 1.5 million Bitcoin divided by 70 million millionaires, you get down to 0.02 Bitcoin. There's just not much to go around. 0.02 Bitcoin, if we're at $1 million Bitcoin price, say that's 10, 15 years from now, that'd be about $20,000 worth of Bitcoin. So that would give a millionaire a 2% allocation towards Bitcoin. It's not like they can buy that much, right? And of course, they could always put in 100K of their $1 million, but they're going to have to spend a lot of money on that, and they're not going to get much Bitcoin in that scenario. If everyone were to do that, the price would skyrocket up, obviously. So I hope you're following along. I hope that makes sense to you. There's just not a lot of Bitcoin to go around. You can look at all different ways, whether you want to look at millionaires buying or the average person buying. There's not much. Also, keep in mind that one of the ways that a lot of people get Bitcoin right now is mining. A lot of large entities get Bitcoin from mining, and then they go sell it or they keep it. But only about 41,000 Bitcoin will be mined globally between 2040 and 2044, barely over 15 years away. So we're talking about all 4 years. There's going to be 41,000 Bitcoin mined. Saylor bought 30,000 Bitcoin in the last 90 days. So right now, it's still somewhat easy to get your hands on Bitcoin if you have hundreds of millions or billions of dollars. In the future, there will be billions, tens of billions, maybe hundreds of billions of dollars worth of Bitcoin miners, of public companies that are trying to get their hands on this Bitcoin. And they're going to be fighting over scraps compared to what they're getting now. Keep in mind, 20 years from then, in 2060, there's going to be less than 1 Bitcoin mined a day in the entire world. Also keep in mind there's going to be a lot of Bitcoin lost between now and then. So it's going to be extremely rare. So that brings us to this. If you have 0.1 Bitcoin or 0.01 Bitcoin, you're ahead of a lot of people already. You're ahead of probably 98% of people, 99% of people on Earth, maybe probably even more. I mean, we have around 12 million addresses that have 0.01 Bitcoin, but it's hard to know how many individuals that is. But it is going up. You can see a lot of people are adding Bitcoin. No matter what the price is doing, we are pretty much getting more holders or more wallets that have 0.01 Bitcoin month after month. Now, will this make you extremely rich in 20 years? Maybe, maybe not. It depends on the price of Bitcoin. I know that's not what the answer you're looking for, but let's say Bitcoin's at $10 million. $10 million in 20 years. I know it sounds crazy, but if we're at $1 million in 10 years, $10 million isn't crazy to think about with all the amount of accumulation 10 years from then. That's a 10x over 10 years, right? It's not unheard of. But let's say it's $10 million, right? With 0.01 Bitcoin, you have 100 grand. Now, maybe that's life-changing money. Maybe it is. Maybe that is all that you need. But for most people, that's not going to be enough. That's not going to be enough to retire. It is going to be better than the average person, though. People are going to look at you and think, oh man, I should have bought that too. Like if you knew someone that bought a piece of property for $400, then all of a sudden 20 years later, it's worth 100 grand. Like that's still a good buy. You just wish they kind of had bought more, right? So this is the scenario that we're talking about, right? You buy $400 today, it's worth 100 grand if Bitcoin hits $1 million. Keep in mind, there's going to be a lot of inflation from here to then too. So that 100 grand maybe is really worth like 20, maybe 15, 10, something like that. But what if you had more? What if you had it's not on this list, but zero point 0.1 Bitcoin. Now you're talking. Now that's sizable. Right now, that would be $4,000. So that's still a lot of money for people to put aside. If you're making $50,000 a year, you put 10% in Bitcoin. After taxes, that's about $4,000, right? That's a nice base. Like if Bitcoin really does get up to $10 million, you have $1 million worth of Bitcoin. People will be jealous of you. It'd be like if you had 200K in investments right now after inflation, 20 years from now, maybe that million's really like 200K, right? But it would be a significant amount. People would think, oh, wow, you haven't gotten to the point where you can retire, but that's sizable. That's a good chunk of change. You can put a down payment on a house. You could buy a freaking nice boat. You could do a lot of stuff. You're going to be well thought of if people know that you bought at 40K Bitcoin and then it's worth 10 million. Still, it's one of those scenarios though where it's not enough to retire. It isn't. But it's a good start. That's why it's important to dollar cost average, because the power of dollar cost averaging means that you can get your hands on a lot more Bitcoin. If you're slow and steady about it, you won't get fudded out hopefully as easily as you're get as fudded out from your Bitcoin. Now, what about if you had 1 Bitcoin? Now you're talking. This is where people can retire. Really. If you look at maybe $1 million Bitcoin in 10 years, $2 million Bitcoin, you're getting very close to retirement, and that's where you're talking. Even with just 1 Bitcoin, you probably have other assets too. You're probably investing into other cryptocurrency assets. Hopefully you're also investing into stocks and real estate and that kind of stuff. But if you have 1 Bitcoin and Bitcoin hits $1 million, that's probably a significant portion of what you need to retire. I did a video recently, how to retire on Bitcoin. I'll put it on the end screen, but still, you're not to the point necessarily where you're going to retire on 1 Bitcoin in 10 years if Bitcoin hits $1 million, because there is going to be inflation. You probably need more than that if you spend what the average family spends. But if you're single, maybe you can retire on that. That's still going to be very impressive though. Think about it. If someone owns, let's say, $500,000 worth of stocks right now, like, you realize that they're wealthy, right? You realize that they are really in a good position to retire if they just work another 5 or 10 years, probably, maybe a little bit longer than that. But you realize that they have things pretty much set. Their finances look really good, most likely. Now, if you have a couple Bitcoin, let's say you have 2 or 3, and we're talking about $1 million Bitcoin, maybe we go up to that $10 million Bitcoin. To be clear, if Bitcoin gets to $10 million, you can probably retire with 1 Bitcoin in 20 years. It's probably not going to be a problem. But let's say you have 2 or 3 Bitcoin and we're at $1 million. People are going to think you're rich. People will. I mean, of course, if you come from a very wealthy area, if you have really wealthy friends, I'm talking millionaires, 5 to 10 millionaires, they're not going to think that you're like loaded. But if you live in a very normal area, people are going to think you're rich. I would not tell them that you have that amount of Bitcoin, but if they ever found out, if they knew, and you lived in what would now be like a $300,000 house or something like that, people are going to think you're rich. People are going to maybe try to mooch off you if they knew how much money you really had or how much Bitcoin you had. People are going to say you're lucky. People are going to say, oh, they wish they could have gone in at this time around 40,000 or 20,000 whenever you bought. But you're going to realize, well, you worked your ass off for it. You put in a lot of blood, sweat, and tears in whatever way you make money, and then you went and risked your money in Bitcoin when everyone was fudding it, when everyone was saying that it was crap and that it was going to go down to zero. You stuck around. You put in the hours. You watched YouTube. You stuck on Twitter. You continued to dollar cost average. You didn't get it lost in any big blow up. You didn't send it to the wrong address. You held it for 20 years. You deserve a medal, right? Like there's that meme, like where the kids are sitting on the dad's lap and they asked him how he first bought Bitcoin or when he first bought Bitcoin, and they call him a legend. Like, you will be a legend if you own 2 to 3 Bitcoin and Bitcoin really does get to where we think it will be. Now, what if you had 10 Bitcoin? This is crazy. There are a lot of addresses, over 100,000, that hold 10 Bitcoin or more. Keep in mind, some of these entities have multiple wallets. So in a guess, I would say there's probably about 50,000 people that hold 10 Bitcoin or more in the whole world. It's not a large number. This is a very exclusive list. Think about that. 70 million millionaires on Earth, and 50,000 of them hold 10 Bitcoin or more. Right now, that'd be 400K worth of Bitcoin. So doable for a lot of people. Not a lot of people, but if you're a millionaire now, you could very well have 10 Bitcoin. right? If you have some real estate, you have some stocks, you have some cash, but then 50% of your portfolio is in Bitcoin. It's doable for a millionaire to do it now. It's not easy, but it's doable if you're liquid enough. Now, we get to $1 million Bitcoin, we get to $10 million Bitcoin, people are going to think you're rich. People are going to think you're loaded, just like the previous scenario with 2 or 3 Bitcoin. But now it's interesting because if you have 10 Bitcoin and Bitcoin's at $5 million, still you have some inflation and stuff, but you can live wherever you want. You can probably hire maids all the time, drivers, a chef. You can afford all that. You can buy whatever car you want. You can buy your kids probably whatever car they want. You can have a cottage. You can fly wherever you want, whenever you want. You don't have to work. You will probably have to figure out what you want to do, right, with your time. You might be stressed about keeping the 10 Bitcoin, like just securing it. Hopefully there are better ways of doing it in 20 years that are less risky. I mean, you could probably even pay for insurance now for something like that in your house, but you're going to be loaded if Bitcoin hits $5 million and you have 10 Bitcoin. Now, some people will try to take advantage of you. That's just what people do, I think, some of the time with really wealthy individuals, but you're going to be able to help the people you want to help. You'll be able to retire your parents, your friends, your wife, whatever you want. You can give to your kids' education. You can pay for their entire college. You're going to be set up well. Now, that is if we are right. That is if we are right where Bitcoin's going, 500,000, a million, $10 million years down the line. Keep in mind, it's going to become very scarce, as I said earlier. There's already not a lot of Bitcoin going around right now. This is the first cycle from 2020 to 2024 where we've seen the supply drop. The amount of Bitcoin coming to exchanges is not high enough to actually make the supply go up on exchanges. All the miners are selling. There are more buyers than sellers right now. That's what we've seen this year. Bitcoin's price is going up. It's very scarce. There are large entities getting in. So if you want to see someone else's take, Michael Saylor's take, I'm going to play that clip for you. Talk about whether 0.1 Bitcoin is enough or 0.01 Bitcoin. Now, this is a bit of a longer clip, but I think it's worth watching. Keep in mind there are links to Margex underneath the video and to my Patreon if you want to see what I'm buying and selling. But I want to play this clip for you.
As an average American, there's only one hang up I have is that I feel like I'm a little late to the party. There's no way I can accumulate one whole Bitcoin. I mean, at this point, I'm shooting for 0.1 Bitcoin. So, I mean, I guess my question is 0.1 Bitcoin of any significance?
You know, New York was the greatest city in North America by about 1776. And you would have been late to the party. But the question is, would you buy a city block in New York in 1776? Or if you waited till 1876 and you were really late to the party and New York was the greatest city in North America, was it too late to buy a city block in New York City in 1876? Or how about 1976? If you were 200 years late to New York City, if you look at the property values of New York in 1976, what you'll find is you would be rich if you had actually bought real estate in New York in 1976. So the answer to the issue is, in every economic system, every economic empire, there's always one city, one place, one network where people gravitate to. In the ancient Med, it was Carthage for a while. And then it was Rome, and then it was Venice, and eventually the French Empire terminated in Paris, and the British Empire terminated in London, and then eventually the American economic empire terminated in New York. And there are reasons why. It's just everybody comes together in that place. Even today, New York is still the economic epicenter of the United States. And so Bitcoin represents the economic epicenter of cyberspace. It is the one place where if I want to create a digital application, if I want to move money at the speed of light, and I live in Singapore, I'm using Bitcoin. If I live in Paris, I'm using Bitcoin. If I live in Moscow, I'm using Bitcoin. If I live in China, I'm using Bitcoin. So you see, everybody in the world that actually believes in the idea of a digital asset that wants to build this as a treasury reserve asset, they're going to gravitate toward the most powerful network. Why? Because everybody else is gravitating there. Why do people go to New York? Because the smart money is in New York. I could go to New York 20 years ago. I could take 10 meetings. I could raise $1 billion in 2 days. So why would you be so stupid as to go to New York? Well, because that's where the money is. The money is in New York, so I win. And what did I bring with me? I brought my brain power, and I built my business there. And so I then reinforced that network effect. Today, the smart money is in Bitcoin. Bitcoin's about a $500 billion network. How big can it get? Well, 500 trillion, 1,000x bigger in today's dollars. There's about $950 trillion worth of wealth out there. 350 trillion worth of real estate. Half of it is just capital or monetary premium. $300 trillion worth of bonds. Half of it is just a monetary premium. 100 trillion worth of equity. Half of it is a monetary premium. 11, 12 trillion worth of gold. 80% of it is a monetary premium. So as the world gets smarter, people are going to sell those things because they don't make good money. Gold is awful money, right? It's just awful money. If you store your money in gold, you're losing half of your wealth every 35 years. So why would you do that, right? It's not working. In the last 2.5 years, gold is down 5%, Bitcoin is up 150%. The only people that are buying or holding gold are people that aren't paying attention, right? The smart money is clearly running away from it. And in time, people will dump their gold. And when they dump their gold, Bitcoin will jump by a factor of 10. So the answer to the question of why you should buy a Bitcoin is that Bitcoin represents one block in cyber New York, which has got 21 million blocks for all of eternity. And in the year 2500, people are going to be moving to cyber New York, right? I mean, New York was founded a long time ago, right? The only thing that keeps people from continuing to come into the great city, whether it's the New York or the London or the Paris, is when the economic flows move from the physical domain to the digital domain. As long as you did business in an analog world where you had to like put on a suit and walk into a building and meet with people, then you're going to see London and Paris and Tokyo and Hong Kong be great cities. When the economy moves to the digital realm and you don't have to put on a suit and walk into a building and you can have a Zoom meeting of 20 people in 20 places and raise $1 billion in a day, right? Then some of the economic energy drains out of the city networks and it drains into the crypto network. And so buying a Bitcoin, whether it's one Bitcoin or a million Satoshis or 100,000 Satoshis or one Satoshi, is just like buying into New York City 250 years ago. Yeah, sure, you're late. People got there 100 years before you. Okay? Well, in this case, someone got there 14 years before you. I once tweeted, very famously, I said, I think Bitcoin is, going the way of online gambling. And I think Bitcoin was like $100 a coin then. Okay? And I was wrong, but I didn't need it. I was wrong. When I needed Bitcoin was $9,500, $10,000 a coin. And so I bought it at $10,000 instead of $100. People will buy it at 100,000. They will buy it at 1 million. They will probably buy it at 10 million, right? Because, how much does it cost for an apartment in Manhattan? People pay $10 million for 4,000 square feet. $10 million, right? All of Manhattan was purchased for like $29 in beads or something. If you roll the clock back, some nothing. And so you can't really get caught up in what the unit price is. You have to ask the question, what is the dominant network in cyberspace? And Bitcoin is the dominant network. And the reason it's the dominant network is a bunch of things. One, all the smart money arrived there, right? If all the smart people that wanted a decentralized, non-sovereign store of value crypto network, if they all showed up, looked at 10,000 choices and picked this one and put all their money on it, right? That's like all the smart people, they showed up in America and they picked New York. You know why they picked New York? New York is sitting on 200 million year old granite schist, right? It's indestructible as an island, Manhattan. It's sitting between a bunch of rivers. It's sitting in front of one of the world's great harbors. And it's sitting at the mouth of the Hudson River, which is a mile wide, deep, and it goes straight right into the heart of the country. So if you were picking a port city, it was the most rock solid, geographically sound, logistically sound, well engineered port you could possibly imagine, and so it matters. And Bitcoin represents the same thing. Bitcoin is backed by 400 exahash of digital energy, and 400 exahash of digital energy makes it the most powerful computer network in the world. And so if I'm going to put $1 billion on it, I would want the indestructible, nation-state resistant, fault-tolerant, most powerful computer network in the world. I wouldn't want the second most powerful network. And I wouldn't want a network 100 times less powerful. I want a network where you would need every computer in the world to slow it down 10%, and you would need all the electricity in the world to slow it down 10%. And that's what Bitcoin represents because of the way it's engineered. It represents an indestructible, unstoppable, most powerful computer network. And so anybody is looking to, if you're looking right now, you shouldn't look at it as, well, I wanted to buy something cheap and wait for it to go up 100x, so I better buy something that's a penny stock. Like, there is a meme, we call it penny stocks, right? The whole joke of a penny stock is, if you really wanted a penny stock, we can manufacture thousands of them. That's the theme of the movie Boiler Room. The Wolf of Wall Street did that. It's been going on for hundreds of years. People manufacture a penny stock and they tell you you'll buy it for a penny. It's going to go up to $5. You're going to make 500x your money. That's not what you want. You want a cheap apartment? I'll sell you a $4 million apartment in New York, which looks expensive, or I'll sell you a $42,000 apartment, in some random suburb, in a third world country. But the point really is, which is the better real estate investment? It's not a matter of the cost to buy the thing. It's a question of how secure is the network you're buying into. And everybody will tell you, you buy the beachfront property in Palm Beach or Miami Beach, you're better off to buy a house on land than to buy the apartment. You're better off to buy the apartment in the good building than the bad building, and you're better off to buy the apartment in the good neighborhood than the bad neighborhood. And you're better off to buy the real estate in the capital city of Rome or London or Paris or New York than to buy the real estate in the 13th biggest city in the country.
I'll see you in the next video.